Do you want to reduce the nuclear arsenal?
No, I never discussed increasing it. I want it in perfect shape. That was just fake news by NBC. Thank you, everybody. They had these beautiful soft towels, very good towels. And I came in, and there was a crowd of a lot of people, and they were screaming, and they were loving everything. And I was having fun. They were having fun. They said, throw them to me, Mr. President. And so I'm doing, and I went to Puerto Rico, and I met with the president of the Virgin Islands.
Good morning and welcome to AM Joy. While questions grow about Donald Trump's fitness for the office of the presidency, he is trying to change the narrative by fulfilling some of his legislative promises. After trying and failing, then trying again and failing again, and then failing after trying yet again to repeal the Affordable Care Act, Trump this week switched to directly sabotaging the health care law in ways that don't require a congressional sign-off. On Friday, he gave a speech denouncing President Obama's Iran nuclear deal, but stopped short of unraveling it, as he promised, at least for now, and kicking the decision to Congress. So why all of these sudden but less than effective attempts to push his agenda forward? According to a series of articles published this week, Trump might be lashing out, desperate for some legislative wins after 9 months of stalling. As Vanity Fair's Gabriel Sherman puts it, Trump's ire is being fueled by his stalled legislative agenda and, to a surprising degree, by his decision last month to back the losing candidate Luther Strange in the Alabama Republican primary. According to Sherman, Trump even vented to his security chief that, quote, "I hate everyone in the White House. There are a few exceptions, but I hate them." In fact, 10 current and former administration officials and associates confirmed to Politico that they often spend much of their days managing Trump and his anger-induced whims. Joining me now, Washington Post opinion columnist Catherine Rampell, MSNBC political contributor Jason Johnson, former representative from Florida David Jolly, and VoteVets.org chairman Jon Soltz. Thank you all for being here. So, Catherine, you have a situation in which the president is being described as unraveling by members of his own administration who are venting to reporters. At what point is it fair for the American people to, quite honestly, to start to address whether or not Donald Trump is having a breakdown of some kind, or whether he is...
It seems like he had been having this sort of breakdown and unraveling, to use the term of art, for months. I mean, predating his arrival in the White House. And the issue is that there are Americans who are concerned about it. There are the majority of Americans who voted in the last election, of course, if you look at the popular vote. But his base either doesn't care or doesn't know about it. And in my view, the only way that you're going to really have a turning of the tide and you're going to have other elected Republicans decide to stand up to him is for, like, Fox News to suddenly turn against him. I know it's not going to happen, but yeah. If Rupert Murdoch suddenly decided, you know, we're not going to back this horse anymore, then maybe you would have more coverage of the crazy stuff that he's doing, and his base would actually learn about it and start to care.
See, I wonder if that matters that much to Jason. To Catherine's point, let's play a little bit of the history of Donald Trump, even before he got into the White House, and sort of his odd behavior. This is Donald Trump.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's, like, incredible.
Bing, bing, bong, bong, bing, bing, bing. You know what that is, right?
It's Rubio! If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously.
The president-elect told you what?
Let it be an arms race. We will outmatch them at every pass.
And outlast them all.
And outlast them all.
So, you know, Jason, it isn't, to me, a question of Donald Trump support. Donald Trump supporters at this point, you know, they're not changing their minds. Right. I don't think they're the definitive issue here. The question is whether or not the people who have the power to do something about Donald Trump, members of Congress, for instance, his cabinet, are going to take action if they themselves feel that he is unraveling.
Well, Joy, you know, there is that report that Kelly and some of the other Joint Chiefs will literally tackle him if they think that Donald Trump might launch the nuclear codes and a peak of anger. But this is the larger question that America has faced. No, it's not about the Trump supporters anymore. They're kind of lost. They want to do what they want to do. They're sort of enjoying the sort of spectacle he's creating. But it's a real question of Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and members of the administration. Do you love America or do you love power? Because if you love America, you have to constrain this man. He is a living, breathing danger. He is an imminent threat to our national security, our domestic security, and our economy. He has fumbled through the first 10 months of his presidency. He's not going to learn. He's not going to get any better. And the more that he angers people, the more that he tries to pull out of deals, the more that he yells at the Prime Minister of Australia, the more that he meets with fictitious presidents of the Virgin Islands, even though he is one, the more that we won't even have allies to help us when his mistakes drag us into conflicts that we can't handle. So this is the real proving ground. Do these people really love this country? Because if they do, they'll do something about it. And if they don't, we all suffer.
You know, David Jolly, I have to turn to you because you are a former Republican member of Congress. And this is what's disturbing, is that behind the scenes, all of us who talk to Republicans off the record get the same exact message, that people on Capitol Hill know that there's something deeply, deeply wrong in the White House, and that they are actually concerned for the country. He's pulling us out of the Iran deal, which could destabilize our relationship with our allies. He just made a move that could tank the individual healthcare market, seemingly just out of sheer spite, without really seeming to understand what these things, will even do when he implements these policies. You had Bob Corker, a sitting senator and a committee chairman, say it's a shame tweet last week, it's a shame that the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning. He had an interview with the New York Times in which he stood by those comments and said, I know for a fact that every single day at the White House, it's a situation of trying to contain him. Add to that Robert Reich, who reports his own background conversation, again off the record, with a former Republican congressman who said that Tillerson, that Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, would leave tomorrow if he wasn't so worried that Trump would go nuclear, literally. Robert Reich, you think Trump is really thinking about nuclear war? He knows who knows what's in his head, but I can tell you this, he's not listening to anyone, not a soul. He's got the nuclear codes, and well, it scares the hell out of me. It's starting to scare the hell out of them. That's really why Bob spoke up, and by them he means Republican members of Congress. At what point are they responsible to do something about that?
Clearly we're getting close. We do have to put in context, removing a president from office is a very significant measure historically. We have had incompetent presidents before. We have had angry presidents before. But the bar to the 25th Amendment, or the bar to impeachment, is a very high one that we have not yet reached. I think that the stages of reaction to comments like Corker, first, there's a little bit of joy, if you will, for those who have concerns about Trump that someone spoke out. Then there's the sobering reality that the Foreign Relations Chair just suggested our Commander-in-Chief is perhaps incompetent. And then there's the frustration that you realize nobody else is really saying anything or doing anything on the Hill, and so nothing will change. This is a president whose eggshell ego is continuing to put us at risk. There is no discernible strategy to what he's done, either on Obamacare or on Iran. Joy, a lot of Republicans have concern with the Iran treaty, but what the president fails to realize is in his impulsiveness is to react as he did. At the same time, we need other nation states like Russia and China and our NATO allies to deal with North Korea. Why disrupt that alliance and that strategy and those relationships now by pulling out of Iran, possibly?
I mean, Jon Soltz, you represent the group of Americans who stand to, be the first to suffer if Donald Trump decides that his, lashing out in anger, if he decides in this just lashing out process to take this country into a war. If you have a former member of Congress worrying that he would start a nuclear war, when you have a president who can deploy U.S. forces anywhere, when we have him antagonizing the dictator of North Korea with our troops stationed on the demilitarized zone, what are you hearing from people who are either in the military or retired military? Is there a fear now about this president in that, part of our country?
It's terrifying to wake up mostly on the weekends and you see tweets that are things like the calm before the storm. And that terrifies people throughout our military installations across the country, because even if you supported Donald Trump, the perception inside the military is going to be something like, hey, this guy's going to do it. He's got that kind of, mentality. So I think when you look at the road that he's on, specifically first with the Iran deal, that puts, U.S. troops in greater danger in Iraq right now. We've worked with the Iranians on the ground to push ISIS back into Syria, and now sort of have ISIS, at their last ropes. And then you start to look at the North Korea situation. If you're North Korea right now and you see us basically decertify the Iran deal, and you've seen us invade Iraq, and you've seen us, topple Gaddafi in Libya, you really don't see an out here for diplomatic negotiation. So it puts the country on notice. I think this week also from inside the Beltway standpoint, there was the AUSA conference, and that's like sort of the big Army convention that happens annually. And anyone can Google General Milley, the Army Chief of Staff, statements on this, and this is making its way to the bottom levels of the U.S. Army about the devastation that would be occurred if there was U.S. forces in ground combat in North Korea. You could read on a military website, War on the Rocks, Lieutenant General Barno write a tremendous piece this week about tactical use of first-strike tactical nuclear weapons in North Korea. So there's a lot of anxiety inside the military that this president will just do it. But I don't think, and this is my personal opinion, that McMaster and Kelly will live up to General McMaster's PhD thesis, dereliction of duty, where senior military leadership stops this guy. I don't think it matters that Bob Corker, after he says he's not going to run for the Senate, challenges Donald Trump. We need a Republican who's going to run for office, who's going to take on Donald Trump's base to do that. And we need Congress to stand up and put some constraints on Donald Trump's ability to wage war. And so far, they've been unwilling to sort of, touch that narrative where U.S. troops have died now, even last week in Niger, and the president still hasn't acknowledged it.
Yeah, and David Jolly, I have to go back to you on that.
Yeah.
Donald Trump this week, there's a story NBC News broke about Trump wanting a 10-fold increase in nuclear weapons. Apparently, that is the meeting that he had with his senior, cabinet members, after which his Secretary of State reportedly then called him an effing moron for him saying he wants more nukes. He has made flippant statements in the past about using nuclear weapons. He seems to be goading North Korea into conflict. He's pulling out of the Iran deal. At what point is it the responsibility of Republicans who control the Congress to use their power to constrain someone they themselves tell reporters on background may be dangerous?
They have responsibility now. Look, this is a commander-in-chief with no understanding or appreciation for national security. We know that. I do have great confidence in John Kelly. He is a very sober leader, a very experienced national security leader. I think he is doing a good job trying to contain him. If the moment comes when he cannot, watch John Kelly, because the seriousness of this administration rests on how long John Kelly stays. In law, there's what's called an angry withdrawal. If you have a client that's committing a fraud on the court, the attorney's required to resign. If John Kelly leaves, that means something significantly. But Joy, to your last point, there are Republicans, not elected ones, in Washington right now, beginning to question whether or not we would be a safer nation if Democrats took the House in 2018. Because to your point, Republicans are never going to do the job they need to do because of the political consequences they would face at home.
I mean, I would not look to Paul Ryan or to Mitch McConnell for moral leadership. That's the fundamental problem here.
Yeah.
And as long as they're terrified of the base, of having their members be primaried from the right for attacking Trump, or for publicly attacking Trump, I should clarify, rather than on background to reporters, they're not going to do anything.
There is a duty to the American people that's bigger than your desire to be reelected. I agree with you, Catherine. I don't see the courage in the leadership of the Republican Party. I haven't seen it. I mean, they're on background. Everybody's dismayed on background. Catherine Rampell and Jason Johnson are going to stick around. David Jolly and Jon Soltz, thank you both very much. And up next,
great to be with you.